Two students from Titchfield High School in Portland were killed in a motor vehicle crash along the Buff Bay Main Road in the parish on Tuesday. Several others were injured. The students were traveling in a blue Toyota picnic taxi when it crashed into a parked truck. Head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEB, ACP Gary McKenzie, says the crash occurred sometime after 4 p.m.
About 4 p.m., picnic motor car was traveling along the Blueberry Hill Main Road, heading in a westerly direction. It came to the brow half a hill, negotiated it, and whilst traveling, there was a truck that was parked. The truck was in a state of disrepair and was being worked on. My understanding is that it was parked to the left of the road. However, there was a small section of it that was on the roadway. As a result, whilst the car was about to pass, the driver crashed into the right rear section of the truck. Students were injured as well as the driver, and they were taken to the hospital. Two of the students died.
ACP McKenzie says road fatality numbers in Portland are usually low.
The parish of Portland has been a parish that we do not generally have a lot of crashes. In fact, it is one of the parishes that we have very few crashes so far this year. And so, this one, I would say that it is really an isolated incident, because prior to that, we have 5 fatalities from 4 crashes in that parish so far this year.
ACP Gary McKenzie, head of PSTEB. Meanwhile, the Member of Parliament for West Portland, Darcel Vass, has sent condolences to the families of the 2 Titchfield High School students who died tragically on Tuesday.
I've just heard of the terrible news of the fatal accident claiming the lives of 2 students in Portland. The accident took place in my constituency, so I want to give my condolences both as Member of Parliament for West Portland and of course as Transportation Ministry.
Mr. Vass, who's also the Transport Minister, says the authorities will again meet to discuss how to tackle the issues of reckless driving and irresponsible road use.
Once again, the preliminary reports are that speeding was involved, and again, the loss of innocent lives due to irresponsible driving. This is happening far too often, far too frequent, and instead of getting better, it's getting worse. We have a National Road Safety Council meeting this week, and after that meeting, I'm sure that some announcements will be made in terms of what we can do to stem the loss of life on our roads.
Darcel Vass, MP for West Portland and Transport Minister. A 17-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of 20-year-old Catholic college student Akeelia White. He's reportedly set for court sometime in June. Akeelia White died on Monday from stab wounds she received during a dispute at the school located in Mandeville, Manchester. Reports are that 2 male students were involved in an altercation when Akeelia intervened. One student reportedly stabbed the other male student and then Akeelia. The other victim, a 17-year-old boy, was treated at hospital. A member of the Constitutional Reform Committee CRC, King's Counsel Hugh Small, says the current reform process should be suspended. Speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Tuesday, King's Counsel Small says it's best to put the matter on hold until after the next general election.
I've had discussions with both Mr. P.J. Patterson and Mr. Bruce Golding, and I know what they think, and I know that both of them have the best interests of the country at heart. And I sincerely hope that we don't get puffed up with personal pride and regard it as winning or losing now. Put it down now, let the political process run its course, and start afresh after there has been a new parliament after the next general election, whenever that will be.
According to Mr. Small, the process to reform the Constitution needs a bipartisan approach.
The process has not respected the fact that amending the Constitution that requires a referendum can only be successfully done if it is approached as a national matter and not as a partisan matter. From the beginning of my serving on the committee, I have been making that point. And I have been saying that one of the problems is that from the beginning, the leader of the opposition and the prime minister were not speaking to each other. One is trying to gain a position for his particular platform, and now we have a situation in which we have come after a year to a position where the leader of the opposition has said something which he said from last year, that the opposition members will not sign unless the question of the CCJ is resolved.
King's Counsel Hugh Small, a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Meanwhile, King's Counsel Small says it's illogical for Jamaica to remove the British monarch as head of state, but retain the judicial branch of the UK Privy Council as its final appellate court.
You cannot logically remove the monarch from the Constitution insofar as the monarch heads the executive and the legislative branches of the Constitution and government of Jamaica, but leave the judicial branch in the King's Court. The judicial branch is a branch that has to rule on the constitutional validity of acts of the executive branch and the legislative branch. So it is inconsistent, illogical, and highly undesirable that the question of the apex court, the court at the very top of the constitutional architecture of Jamaica, should remain in London.
King's Counsel Hugh Small. And another member of the Constitutional Reform Committee, Dr. Naden Spence, says it's heartbreaking to see the disintegration of a process that committee members have worked so hard to support.
It's one of the most heartbreaking things ever, because we knew that this was an important issue. Everybody, I think most people on the committee agree that we want to see Jamaica move to the CCJ. But we also agree that the start of this process, that we were going to use the phased approach, that we were going to start off with those matters that were deeply entrenched, and eventually we would move in the second phase to other matters that were critical, including the matter of the Caribbean Court of Justice. You cannot proceed in Parliament, you cannot proceed with a referendum. The matter is now dead. How do we revive this? Both government and opposition have to go to the people hand in hand, smiling ear to ear, if we want this to happen.
Dr. Naden Spence, a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee. Opposition leader Mark Golding says it's his personal view and not that of the PNP that dual citizens should be eligible to sit as members of Parliament.
So my position is that this dual citizenship should not be a bar to service. That's my own view, and I think the party will continue to have discussions on this, because, as I've said, this issue we've not had an opportunity to really discuss it, because we didn't know what the specific reform proposals were until this draft report emerged, and then permission was very latterly obtained to share it, even with me as leader of the opposition. But that is the position that we have put forward, because we think that it's appropriate, given the nature of the Jamaican society, where roughly half of our citizens live outside our physical boundaries.
The issue of dual citizenship featured heavily in the aftermath of the September 2007 general elections. The PNP went to court to have 5 JLP MPs, starting with Darcel Vass in West Portland, removed from office on the grounds that they were dual citizens at the time of their nomination and hence ineligible to stand for office. Mr. Golding says he believes members of the Jamaican diaspora should have the opportunity to sit as parliamentarians.
We got through COVID after the collapse of the tourism industry, largely because of the support from the diaspora, where we didn't have a balance of payments crisis. We didn't have a foreign exchange crisis. So I think it's appropriate to allow them. The question of residency needs to be resolved as to whether you're going to have a residency requirement in order to run. And the existing provision of 1 year's ordinary residence to be eligible, I think, is reasonable. In terms of the Senate, we could consider waiving that requirement to allow 1 or 2 persons from the diaspora to sit on the Senate, even if they are not resident here. But these are the kind of issues that need further discussion at the committee.
Mark Golding, opposition leader, he was speaking at a press conference on Tuesday. National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says the number of active gangs in the country has been reduced by almost half. He credited the development to the operational improvements achieved by the Jamaica Constabulary Force under the Holness administration.
2024, at the beginning, there was 244 active gangs. So far this year, we have only identified 106 active gangs. We have seen 27 convictions in some 5 gang trials, including our famous Klansman trial. Right? No problem. In a democracy, we expect any government in power to take some steps in it. But we execute it. We build the force. There are 5 gang matters before the court, and 3 are near going to the court, and overall there are 64 under active investigation. At the moment, there are a total of 164 gang members who have been charged with predicate offences. Several large gangs have been disrupted. Of course, the critical Klansman group is noted, one order is quiet, and of course the Stone Crusher group of Montego has certainly just removed the suspect from the scene.
Dr. Chang was making his contribution to the sectoral debate in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. He also said several murder-for-hire groups have also been disrupted. Well, he said several murder-for-hire groups have also been disrupted.
We have also, I'd like to indicate that the police have picked up several contract killing syndicates, but we accept and agree that the homicide rate is still too high. Yes. Unacceptable. It is being carried out largely by drive-by shooting, mostly shooting on the road. Besides domestic issues where conflicts take place, as unfortunately happened, and I comment on it later, note the tragic killing of one student yesterday in a Catholic college, not a government school. The week before I visited another one in Westmoreland where the student was shot outside the gate. Nonetheless, despite of what is happening, we are trending this year 15% decline in the homicide rate up to today.
That's Dr. Horace Chang, the Minister of National Security. The attorney representing the former general manager of Petrojam, Floyd Grindley, King's Counsel KD Knight, says there is no evidence to prove that his client benefited from aiding and abetting Dr. Percival Bahadur Singh. He made the comment during closing arguments on Tuesday at the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court. Dr. Bahadur Singh, the former chairman of the state-owned oil refinery, is on trial for claiming reimbursement for fraudulent overseas trips and meetings at the company. The claims amounted to more than $73,000. Mr. Grindley is accused of aiding and abetting Dr. Bahadur Singh. Shalois Michael reports.
During closing submissions on Tuesday, King's Counsel Knight questioned the rationality behind his client's involvement in the alleged fraud. He asserted that there is no evidence to prove Mr. Grindley's involvement or that he benefited from conspiring with Dr. Bahadur Singh. KC Knight also questioned the prosecution's claim that Mr. Grindley induced officers at Petrojam to further Dr. Bahadur Singh's alleged criminal act. KC Knight told the court that several of the prosecution's own witnesses testified that they were never forced or influenced by Grindley to sign any document. The defense also challenged the Crown's claim that the accused men were more than just colleagues as they claimed, but were working together for years to defraud the company. In her closing arguments on Monday, lead prosecutor King's Counsel Caroline Hay told the court of letters and documents indicating that Grindley was asked to attend a meeting at the request of Dr. Bahadur Singh and even sought permission for Dr. Bahadur Singh to travel. But KC Knight questioned how conspiracy could be drawn from the men attending public meetings on behalf of the company. He also asserted that there are no phone records to show that they communicated outside of work. Mr. Knight told the court that the only form of communication as presented in the evidence was that of emails, which didn't resemble any form of private conversation. The men had their bails extended until Wednesday, when the matter resumes at 10. Shalois Michael for Nationwide News.
Thank you, Shaloi. We go overseas now because Palestinians across the Middle East on Wednesday marked the anniversary of their mass expulsion from what is now Israel, with protests and other events at a time of mounting concern over the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. The Nakba, which is Arabic for catastrophe, refers to the 700,000 Palestinians who fled or were driven out of what today is Israel before and during the war surrounding its creation in 1948. More than twice that number have been displaced within Gaza since the start of the latest war, triggered by Hamas's attack in Israel on October 7. UN agencies say 550,000 people, nearly a quarter of Gaza's population, have been newly displaced in the last week.